Hello, New Zealand. I'm Bob McCoskrie. Welcome to Straight Talk. This is episode number 60. 5 years to go to retirement. Tonight we discuss the government's performance 1 year since Election Day. Yes, it was a year ago today that was Election Day, 2023. Should we be concerned about food banks closing down? The support for the Treaty Principles Bill is dropped, but it's still in the majority. And is One News about to be outsourced like Newshub was to Stuff? We also find out from each of the panellists what song they'd like to hear in their final moments here on Earth. In fact, if you'd like to tell us what is your final song that you'd like to hear just before you go to meet your maker, then sure, send that through. You can make comments on Facebook Family First page and also on our YouTube account. Without further ado, let's meet the panel. Another fantastically handsome lot. Firstly, Peter Williams, deep in the south, where it's probably still daytime. How are you, Peter?
I'm very good, Bob. I just had to unmute my microphone. Yes, it is still daytime here, isn't it? Where you are?
No, pitch black. Terrible. Elliot Ikele is somewhere in the middle of the North Island travelling on a road show. How is it, Elliot? Nice to have you back.
Oh, awesome to be here. Thank you so much, Bob. And yeah. We have nighttime. So
Okay,
I don't know what Peter's talking about.
Slightly further south in Masterton is Sue Reid. How are you, Sue?
Very good, Bob. Yep, we're back to winter weather here.
Okay.
With the fire lit again.
Yeah, actually, it's the same in Auckland. It's pretty chilly. I was just looking at the lineup, actually. I think Gordon must have done this. We've got all the men along the top and all the women along the bottom. That wasn't intentional, by the way. Mel Taylor gets a special award for tonight because she has come onto the panel with only 2 hours' notice. So, Mel, well done. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
And finally, with plenty of notice, but still struggled because of having to feed little Samuel, is Ala Pomalele. Nice to have you, Ala.
Evening, everybody. Thanks, Bob. Good to be here.
Now, our image of the day is, it's this one. It's the death of the Disinformation Project, which was officially wound up just this month. And its death line was, beware of the trad mums. And if you know anything about the Disinformation Project, you'll know why. Our video of the week comes from the latest one from the Kamala Harris campaign. And it's basically because Kamala Harris is worried that men aren't going to vote for her. So I went and tried to find some men to do an ad to encourage people to vote for Kamala Harris. It became one of the cringiest political ads ever. Have a watch.
I'm a man.
I'm a man, man.
And I'm man enough.
I'm man enough to enjoy a barrel-proof bourbon.
Neat.
Man enough to cook my steak rare.
Man enough to deadlift 500, then braid the out of my daughter's hair.
You think I'm afraid to rebuild a carburetor? I eat carburetors for breakfast.
I ain't afraid of bears.
That's what bear hugs are for.
I'll tell you another thing I sure as shit am not afraid of. Women.
I'm not afraid of women.
I'm not afraid of women.
They want to control their bodies? I say go for it.
They want to use IVF
lovely.
to start a family? I'm not afraid of families.
They want to be childless cat ladies?
Have all the cats you want.
Woman wants to be president?
Well, I hope she has the guts to look me right in the eye and accept my full-throated endorsement.
Because I'm man enough to support women.
Man enough to know what kind of donuts I like.
Man enough to admit I'm lost, even when I refuse to ask for directions.
Man enough to not ban young women from reading Little Women.
Or one of those pants books that the sisters like.
I'm man enough to raw dog a flight. It sucked. Not worth it.
I'm man enough to be emotional in front of my wife.
In front of my kids.
In front of my horse. I'm man enough to tell you that I cry at Love Actually. Good Will Hunting.
West Side Story.
That and Predator.
And I'm sick of so-called men domineering, belittling, and controlling women just so they can feel more powerful. That's not how my mama raised me.
I love women.
I love women who support their families.
Women who decide not to have families.
Women who take charge.
And I'm man enough to help them win.
Well, there we are. There's Man Up. Now, I actually read a little bit about the actors. They put out a release about, a bit of investigative work about who the actors were. One of them is a far-left pro-Antifa comedian and actor who's found limited success. The one of them is bisexual, has done gay-for-pay movies and nude solo shoots. He's the one that says man enough to braid his daughter's hair. The only problem is he doesn't have a daughter. And the heavy set fellow in the ad who claims to be a mechanic and rancher, the tough looking dude. Yeah, he actually lives in Los Angeles and his claim to fame as a character in a low-budget superhero film, Spaghetti Man. So those are the ones that are voting for Kamala. Anyway, we'll see if we can find a ridiculous one for Trump. But that actually leads us to our very quick first question for the panel. And I want to ask all the panelists, because 3 weeks to go before the US election. What is the prediction? We're going to keep a record of this and find out who has made the best prediction. So, Peter, we'll start with you. Trump or Harris?
Definitely Donald Trump. I think he'll win Pennsylvania, and that will take him over the line. That'll get him somewhere in the low 270 electoral college votes. That's what he needs. 270 is the magic number. Once you get past 270, you are the president. I'm just worried about those mail-in votes, though.
You think it's going to be close still?
I think it is, yeah.
Okay. Where's Elliot gone? Oh, there he is. What's the cat? Oh, it's your Trump
You know what's
cat.
up, Bob. You know what's up. All right. Now, let me preface this by saying that I bought this in 2020. So I bought this in 2020.
Whoa.
Nothing's changed. I don't think it'll be as powerful as what we saw in 2016. I think it'll be a bit closer. So I do think it'll be Trump. I would, however, love to see the change between the Hispanic and the black vote. That's what I'm really curious about seeing. But I believe it'll be Trump. I think it'll be a catastrophe. It's the other way.
Yeah, well, you're brave to wear that cap, although when I was in Washington, D.C., it was just after Trump got shot. And I tell you what, you could buy Trump hats everywhere and everybody was very proud to wear them. It was quite interesting. So things do change. Sue, who are you predicting, Trump or Harris? We're keeping a record of this.
Well, I'm reduced to hopeful predictions at this stage. Of course, it'll be Trump. But I think they're very much, it's like New Zealand was this time last year. We had a tipping point election, and the US is very much in place for a tipping point election. So my hopeful prediction is Trump.
Okay, Mel?
With ads like the one that you just showed, surely it will be Trump. I mean, it boggles my mind to think that you can look up who those actors were. Come on, America. Really?
Yeah.
And saying that, I said it last week as well, one day in politics is a long time.
Yeah.
So although I think Trump, who knows?
Yeah. A lot can happen. Ala, any predictions?
I don't really care. No, I'm kidding. I haven't really been following, but it's going to be close just based on what I'm seeing on social media. But my vote would be with Trump. So,
okay.
Wait
and do you think it's going to be close?
Based on what I'm seeing on social media, I think there's still a large portion of Americans that actually are drinking the Democrat Gatorade still and really firmly believe with their soul and lives and what Harris and Waltz are campaigning on. So, but yeah, there are also equally many others that are jumping on the Trump and what's his name? JD campaign.
JD Vance.
So I think it's going to be tight, but it'll be Trump.
Yeah, Peter?
I just wanted to say also, Bob, that if Trump gets in, there could be some remarkable cabinet ministers making decisions at the White House. I think there's every chance Elon Musk might become a secretary of something. I'm not kidding. He, of course, has thrown himself full on into the Trump campaign. And imagine a guy like Elon Musk. I know he's got a lot of stuff on his plate at the moment, running a few multi-billion-dollar companies. But as a naturalized American, he's pretty keen to be part of the next administration. And then the other guy is Robert Kennedy Jr., who I think will be the new health czar as well. So if Trump gets in, there could be some really intriguing cabinet appointments.
Yep, and Ben Carson, and also who was the guy that stood against Trump but bowed out? The really smart guy, speaks really fast.
Vivek
Ramaswamy,
yeah. So that's going to be part of it. So that's going to be interesting. Okay, my prediction is that Trump's going to win by miles. And the reason I make that prediction is because in 2016, same time out for them, the election, Trump was about 10 points behind Hillary Clinton and came through on the day. So, Peter, as you said, subject to postal ballots and a little bit of screwing the scrum, I think it'll be a walkover. But anyway, we'll soon see. So that's the predictions. All right, let's have a look. 1 year today since the election 2023. Do you remember that night?
Do the maths.
National plus ACT, that's 61 seats exactly. So it's a majority.
Clearly it's not the result we're looking for.
Let's watch very closely, but let's be aware of the fact that it is a long night.
I called Christopher Luxon to congratulate him on National's results. To my family, for everything that you have done for me.
We did this! I just knew that we had to go for it. It's actually a huge shift to Party Māori.
Nau mai oki mai a te welcome back to Rotorua.
Currently, Te Party Māori lead 6 seats. Labour leads just 1.
Your work has delivered a Green Party campaign that has once again defied history.
I've long said that getting elected is not an achievement, it's an opportunity to do good.
Thank you, New Zealand, because from all over your country, this great country, you have reached for hope and you have voted for change.
Okay, so that was a year ago, and there's been 2 polls that have just come out. One was at the end of last week, and it showed a bit of a dip for National, bit of a rise for Labour. But as you can see, it's sort of holding the line. The Greens sort of a little bit of a dip, Yellow. They're all within the margin of error. And then there was one that just came out on the 6 o'clock news, which of course you all watched. And that showed very little movement. I mean, 1% change. It's all within the margin of error, basically. So what it does tell you is that after a year, the government has done some pretty drastic things, has been trying to fix a lot of things, some pretty controversial stuff, and they're maintaining their popularity despite a lot of attack and a lot of media attack. So that's got to be credit to the government coalition, which everybody predicted would fall apart within 6 months. So, Sue, what's your rating for the government and for the opposition?
I said 8 out of 10 for the coalition. They've got a lot of work to do, and they've got to work, and they sound really intelligent, and they've got their plan and they're working to it, and they're delivering it. And I just keep thinking, when I was looking back at that, imagine where we would be. We can look at those polls, bumping around or whatever. Well, we still have to remember, where would we be today if Labor and the hard left had have got in? And I shudder to think. And I just, I actually worked an election last year, so it was an unusual night. It was a very long night and very honest night, and very. It showed the system holds up as an honest process. But I'd give them 8 out of 10 and 3 out of 10 for opposition, for being undisciplined and just that attacking and really, stretching their truths a bit and really not. I'd go as far as lying and disparaging of some of those sitting cabinet ministers and those who've got key people who've got portfolios. So, I'm happy with things, but it's pretty boring really when you think about it, that when you have to fix things, where people wanted this do everything now and a big magic wand to come in. We're having to fix things. The country is in dire straits financially, and that's not popular to have to fix things.
Yeah, I was interested that for the first time in a long time, I saw Chloe Shawbrook actually on the news. Yes. The Greens have been so quiet, although I hear that ex-Green MP, the shoplifter one,
Goldrez,
is appealing her decision. So that's an interesting one. Mel, what do you give the government out of 10 and the opposition out of 10 after a year?
Give them 7.5. It's a lot of damage has been done over 2 election cycles, and we had Labor and the Greens that were just throwing money left, right, and centre with OT. there was so much money, it was ridiculous. I think they took on hundreds and hundreds of agencies to farm out half of the work. And now we've got all of the money being pulled back out of OT, which it needs to be done, sort of. And I think we'll see a fluctuation in the polls over the next year. We spoke about this before about women voting, a lot of women voting for the left. So if you're polling women and they're possibly emotional at the time, or they're feeling the pinch financially, or they lost their job or whatever, then they'll flip their vote quite easily. So it's still a long way out, but I think the coalition's doing pretty well with the damage they were left with.
Yeah. Now, it was you that said that women are emotional, not me, eh? I just want to clarify that just for
but I put the word
benefit
left
of the
in there as well. Left.
Just for the benefit of the Broadcasting Standards Authority. Ala, what do you give the government out of 10?
I'm probably similar to Mel, like a 6.5. Obviously, they've done a lot in their first year, especially in that 100 days. They've obviously fulfilled some of the things that they campaigned on. I think especially in the education sector, where they're trying to reform a lot of the literacy and numeracy, which is great. They haven't quite made a stance on, I think they've been soft on some of the cultural issues in terms of euthanasia, the RSE stuff. They're kind of just being neutral, which that's why I've given them a low score. And the opposition, I don't even know that we had an opposition. I forgot we had an opposition. So I'm giving them a 1 for just existing.
Yeah, I agree. I think Te Pāti Māori has probably been more of an opposition than the Greens and Labour combined in some ways. I mean, even if you disagree with them, at least they've been stirring things up. Peter, what do you give the government? What do you give the opposition out of 10?
I give the government probably only a 5. Yes, they've done some good things in education. They've fulfilled some of their promises in terms of pushing back against, say, the Maori Health Authority. But, you know, the government accounts came out last Thursday, was it? And in the 2024 financial year, and admittedly, Labor were in power for the first 2 or 3 months of that financial year, the government spent 18 billion more than the financial year before. 18 billion. And of course, we cannot rein in the spending. And Nicola Willis has moved on about 5,000 or 6,000 public servants. Let's never forget that between 2017 and 2023, there was something like 18,000 public servants added to the workforce up and down the country. So to move on 5,000 or 6,000 of them is really just the beginning. But by Willis cutting back on expenditure such as that, she's really just tinkering around the edges. I believe the time has come for some serious financial surgery in this country. We've got to look at the way we tax ourselves, but also look at the way that we pay for old people in their latter years. And I'll put my hand up as somebody who gets $800 and something from the government superannuation fund every second Tuesday, and during the winter I get a winter heating payment as well. I mean, that's nonsense, the winter heating payment going universally. At the very least, they could save a few million on that by some means testing. But there's got to be a far better savings plan put in place. And, you know, as Roger Douglas once said, there's got to be a better way. And that better way actually comes back to many of the ideas that he's punting, whereby essentially from the moment you start working and earning an income, as well as being income taxed, you are also having individual accounts for things like education, for things like health, for things like your old age pension in 40 years from now. So I really believe we've got to have a really close look at the entire structure of the New Zealand economy, particularly the New Zealand tax system, because the way things are going at the moment, we just can't control our spending, and that's not good enough.
Okay, and what do you give the opposition then?
Well, they haven't got any ideas either. Probably 0.5. You're talking about the Labor Party? I mean, the Labor Party's pretty much irrelevant, really. The other thing, Bob, I just that little montage of the election night last year,
Yep.
there was nothing in there of New Zealand First. What's going
No,
on? Are
you're
you
right.
biased against them?
No, I took that off that place that you used to work for, One News.
Oh, yeah. Well, didn't they worry about them either? I was in Paris for the election last year and didn't see any of TV1's coverage. Looking at that, I'm quite glad I didn't, actually.
Yeah. No, I think they were still sulking about the fact that New Zealand First had got across the line and that Winston was going to be the decision maker. Elliot, what do you give the government out of 10 so far?
So for the first 100 days, I give them an 8 out of 10. And as of right now, I give them a 7 out of 10. I think that they really were transparent. They put out their plan. It was very open, and they were able to tick off a great deal of those. So they did really well in that. Since then, I think that there has been some very good movements in terms of trying to build up that commerce. I think that it's a bit rough to hold them too accountable for the bad financial engagement that we have so far. They have to turn down that tap of spending a great deal, but I don't think they could have just sliced it off. I mean, it's already quite a dramatic slice that they've done with all the public service cuts. So I do give them some credit in that regard. I think that there have been some negative surprises in some of their latest policies that they're bringing out, some of the bills that they're putting forward. So I think 7 out of 10, good, definitely room for improvement. In terms of this poll, I don't think much of it one way or the other. It's a poll 1 year after, and you are always going to have, after those public cuts, you are always going to have a group of people who only regard what they can see like that as being the way in which they vote. So that group of people easily movable. In terms of the opposition, I do give them a 1 out of 10. I think that, and I'm not being exaggerating, I think that we've got the most racist, most divisive, most incompetent, and most, I think, defamatory, every negative thing that I can come up with is what this current opposition is engaging in. They're engaging in deception, racism across the board heavily, activism that we haven't seen before, some of them going on just insane rants, some of it, and unhinged. So yeah, they're absolutely, they're not just awful, but they're an embarrassment to the nation's image.
Okay, well, I might just show an example of that in a sec. We've got a new feature tonight. We're actually allowing the panellists to raise their hands in our program, and I noticed that somebody's hand was up. Who was it? Mel, you had your hand up, didn't you? Was that by accident, or were you testing the system?
No, it wasn't. I just wanted to say that we're really looking at the financial aspects of things with the new government at the moment, rightfully so. But I think what's really missing, I'm writing a book at the moment, and I read that in 1999, Jenny Shipley did a speech on fatherlessness. And she talked about how negatively impacting it is on society. It impacts youth crime. It impacts, there's teenage pregnancies, the breakdown of the family unit, all sorts. So while finances are all well and good, it would be so nice to have a government that looks at these other core reasons, underlining what's going on in society, like fatherlessness, like addressing the problem at the ports where so many drugs are coming in the country. It's terrifying. So that's what I'd like to see in the future.
Okay, well, speaking of opposition and whether they're ranting enough, Debbie Ngarewa-Paka, she's a Te Pāti Māori MP. She did go on a rant. We had to actually go through her little post that she made and remove all the naughty words. We have done that with some beeps, but just have a listen to what she said. The question I want to ask you panellists is this appropriate for a politician to be speaking this way? Does she need a cup of tea and a lie down, or should she be referred to the Privileges Committee, or is she simply speaking to her supporters and it's effective?
My unfiltered, unedited, extremely unapologetic opinion. You suck, government. This coalition government truly sucks. Science, everyone has proved how freaking crazy this bull activity that they're planning now without any science. Long story short, there are some projects in it that have really me off. You're going to see the politician's hat taken off, and I'm going to be wearing my very direct activist hat, and pretty much they're one and the same person, but the activist will be very unfiltered in her I'm really off opinion, and I can't tell you how I am. So their politician's hat's still just been taken off, thrown to the side as the activist here, the frustrated activist, the frustrated grassroots wahine, absolutely off, gutted, obviously really off with the decision.
Okay, that's enough of that. Gordon did a very good job of that. Well done, Gordy. Is it appropriate? Is she appealing to her base? Is that how we want our politicians to speak, or is she just having a good old sound off? Peter, what do you think?
Well, if she's appealing to her base, it says her base is pretty blinking basic, really, doesn't it? I just find it extraordinary behaviour. I mean, there was just not one cogent argument in that rant, was there? There was no solutions, not even an identification of a problem. It was just, I feel peed off and I'm really effed off. Well, so what? So what? Another thought I had was maybe the Irish 50% in her bloodlines was coming to the surface, because that's sort of the behaviour you hear more from Irish people than you do from, shall we say, good-thinking Māori people.
Yeah. Elliot?
Shots fired, hey? Shots fired. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, while I'm watching that, there's a very interesting parallel between her behaviour and the behaviour that we see of those far left activists, that when they are losing arguments, when they are starting to fail on their own positions, they just go absolute crazy. They just go unhinged. So I think that this is very endemic of her ideology. I think she is trying to go for her base as well. But, talking about, not a politician, I'm going to put on the activist hat. I don't think she ever came in as a politician. She only ever came in as activists. And their antics have consistently shown a remarkable disregard for decorum and in the sense of public decency and public service, actually.
Mel, is that a way a lady should speak?
See, the left and emotional, obviously a little too emotional. Oh my goodness. No, it's not. And at the end of that, she says something about, don't watch this, Mum, or I hope you're not watching, Mum. I feel that worried
That's a
about
sign.
Yeah, exactly. If you're worried about your mum seeing that, what about kids seeing that? Or what about, it's not appropriate. Sad.
Yep. Okay. Alla, you get out the jandal?
I'd be arrested too. Look, if embarrassing was a person, it would be her. I mean, if she's going to throw a politician hat aside, then take away all the privileges that come with that public service role, if that's the case. I've seen articles where she's probably spending up large in terms of flights, and she's a new MP. So it's kind of rich to be sort of slagging off the job that's given you certain perks. So if that's, go back to grassroots, just leave the paycheck in Parliament. I think her rant is a reflection of where Te Pāti Māori is that they have a massive focus on grassroots activism, which is great, but they're not sort of busy with parliamentary business where you can shift the dial on some things. So she obviously hasn't read, maybe she skipped her induction as a politician, because wow, that's wild behaviour.
Okay, Sue, you'd get out the soap, would you?
Definitely, yes, absolutely. Standards. She can be an activist, but you can be a smart activist. And when she reduces to a rant like that, then she loses all sensibilities, and taking from Mel, an emotional leftist woman, which is not a good combination. So the party is a party of revolutionaries. They go in, except without guns blazing, figuratively speaking. But she says the government and the government this and the government that. She is part of the government. She might not be in the coalition, but she is part of that government. And so she is like Ella said, that she's receiving a wage from the taxpayer. And so, yeah, okay, if the government is the problem, then don't take the wage. But she's in the house and, you know, they're meant to be working for us. And I don't see her being an activist. Be part of the solutions. Get in there and work. Get in there and work in those places of so that she can make a difference, and that will be a healthier way forward for her followers as well. Okay, we can be angry about things, and we've all been angry about things as conservatives, but we have a smarter way of doing it, and we think about things and how we can be effective. And when you just reduce it to a rant and then not want your mother to see it, well, that should be a wake-up call for her to, you know, just calm it down and start to work a bit harder and smarter.
Okay, we'll check out the comments. Elliot, you got a quick comment? You got your hand raised?
Yeah, just one. Pretty much it was sort of followed up what Ala said about the flights. Debbie Ngāre-Warapaka actually spent the most outside of the MP range. She spent the most amount of money on flights, nearly $40,000. And my understanding is she's refused to even say what they were used for. Now, this is highly hypocritical. So she's happy to use the system, but at the same time, she is absolutely being disrespectful to it. I think she's quite a disgraceful person to be in the position that she is in. I just wanted to put that on there.
Okay, let's check some of the comments. I'll tell you what, they are pouring through. Philip, this is back to the politics, to the presidential election. Do you like lying dogs? Philip, they're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Justine, we're asking what's your favourite song just before you pass on to our next live. Favourite song for funerals, Scars in Heaven. Justine says that. Catherine says, if Trump doesn't get in, the world will never be the same. The thing that is running against him can't put words together to make a real sentence. Spews words, just thinks it sounds intelligent, but I don't believe it has any. It's a puppet and will be a traitor to the people. Donna says, I believe Trump will win 100%. Evening, Donna. Damien says, if you're wanting a song for the Disinformation Project, dum, dum, dum. Another one bites the dust. Neil says, it's been quite a year politically. My assessment is that our country is, for the first time in years, heading in the right direction with slow but steady reform and repair. ANS says at least Labor are honest about their tyranny. Slight tongue-in-cheek there. Kevin says, the sad news, the good news, the last election was the first election I really understood how MMP works. Thank you. Ricky says, give them a 7 out of 10. They still haven't addressed the removal of puberty blockers and better protection for kids trick to take that road. I think that's what Ala was alluding to about the moral issues. Nigel says, spot on with the opposition. Elliot. Fale says, good on you, mate. That's you, Elliot. Simon says, here, Elliot. Jackie says, well said, Elliot. And Amanda says, here's my compliment, Elliot. Where's my money you promised me? Did you pay for a whole lot of people to give you nice comments, Elliot? Kirstine says, being emotional about something doesn't make you correct. Liz says, read Debbie in her rant. What was she exactly ranting about? I listened and couldn't understand what she was referring to, and having another listen leaves me no further informed. Ash says, there is never an okay time to swear. It's disgusting, but for someone in her public and representative position, it's embarrassing. Kellyanne rightly asks, if she's removing her politician's hat, is she surrendering her politician's pay packet? Tracy says, she's acting like a privileged, spoilt child. So crass, why the need for swearing? No need. She has a position of influence, should behave. And Chris says, music to draw my last breath to. How precious is the ransom soul sung a cappella by the Chicago staff band, a USA Salvation Army brass band. It is incredible. That is very specific, Chris. We will see what we can arrange. Right, let's move on to our next topic. South Auckland Community Leader Dave Natale is closing his food bank. He says the government needs to do more to support his and other community initiatives. He runs Butterbean Motivation, and they have a food share service as well. And there was a little bit of media coverage of this one.
Dave Natale's never been afraid of a fight, but the battle to feed our most needy is now too big.
You know, I mean, it's been so I try, I try not to think about it, sis, because it's it's emotional. It affects my family. It affects my mental health. And then now I've got to think about the families that we're letting down.
announcing today he's shutting down his South Auckland food bank. His food bank started the day before lockdown after learning of a mum of four with no money or food. This year, his organisation received $87,000 in government funding, and Letele fundraises the rest. He needs $1 million a year.
We done an impact lab report that showed a $13 return for every $1 invested in us. And I show this to every government bureaucrat that comes to see us. But still we can't get any support.
The Prime Minister says the government's given $175,000 to the charity.
First and foremost is the government is working really hard to get our economic house in order, so that actually that's how we help people through a cost of living crisis.
Okay, so that 175,000, we clarified that is over 2 years, so it's the 87,000 that Dave Letele was referring to. So the question for the panel, is the government doing enough or is this grandstanding by Dave Letele when other groups are continuing? I actually spoke to a food bank manager today and said, look, it is tough out there, but you've got to learn to build basically a reserve and work with the businesses to get that free food and continue to run it. And I guess the other question, team, is will we ever get rid of food banks, which are, when you think about it, they're a relatively recent trend, maybe the last 20 years. So, Sue, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that and thinking about it. Is he fatigued and is he burnt out is more the issue that I was just that came to mind. But it's never ideal that the government, the taxpayer, manages or funds all of our charitable work. That's putting it into, NGOs do great work, and I think there should always be a combination of government, churches, and charities. That's my ideal and my principle. But I think we can. You also say about do food banks have a place in society? Yes, they do. But I think that sometimes we need to step back and probably do more of a targeted, have targeted need and communities that know the need and can identify those specific needs. And I think sometimes we get this free for all attitude and mindset. But I think that I always think back to, not that I was part of it, but from history lesson, from the 30s and the Depression, a very impoverished time, where communities had to, the government wasn't there to help them. And there's been other times in history where the government haven't been there to help people. But communities have known the families or the children that were in need. I don't buy into the narrative of child poverty. I always say families are impoverished. And the best way out of it, as Christopher Luxon just said, is to provide work and to have that as a way out. But let me get back to my point, is that back in the Depression, that families knew those ones that were really struggling, or their father was away working and who needed to be who needed the help. And as communities, we looked after one another. And sometimes I think that the state gets between that. It puts itself between the families and communities by having you have a case manager to go and work out your need and how much taxpayer dollars will come into your household. It may sound a bit simplistic, but it's my ideology that I think about a lot. So I take it back to that. Does it deny the opportunity for communities and churches and other families to step in and meet some of that need?
Okay, Mel, do you agree with that? Do we need more government intervention or support, or do we need to send it back to communities more?
Oh, I think Sue was spot on. Personally, I don't think there should be government funding for food banks. I think it can be quite of a political issue. I think you could get favourites and extra funding, which isn't necessarily a good thing. I think they should be run by churches and charities and should involve an entire wraparound program where they incorporate budgeting and get to know, the people in need, and put them onto other agencies that can provide help as well. I think one of the problems is that we have a large number of people, especially young people, who have a sense of entitlement. So with some of the young people we've had in our care, that we work with them into independence, and they come with the attitude of, I don't want to work, I don't want to make an income, I'm just going to go on the benefit, it works for me. So you go through the pros and cons. Well, what's going to work? What are you going to do if you run out of food? Oh, just go to the food bank. That's what mum's been doing for ages. And we need to make sure that we're giving out food and necessities to people that aren't using their food money for drugs and alcohol. So there really needs to be some tough, robust wraparound programs, some accountability.
Okay, Ala, families doing it tough, some families?
Yes, some. Probably just to draw out a bit of Mel's point, like we do have to acknowledge that there is a portion of people that use food banks that game the system. We saw that throughout COVID. I don't think food banks are the answer. They're not a sustainable solution. I think what we aren't talking about enough, or perhaps pushing back on, is we perhaps need to think a bit more creatively and innovatively about solutions that create less dependence on food banks and the state, and enables people, empowers families and individuals to be able to, I don't know how else to say this, fend for themselves, or things like what Mel was saying, that wraparound support, like budgeting, how to cook meals on a budget, so things like that, as opposed to just throwing resources at these issues that maintain the status quo. We're seeing generations of families go through food banks, which Mel alluded to, and that's still happening, which is awful. And so we need to figure out, how do we optimize the circuit breakers, like employment, like education, that'll give people in these situations a hand up. I'm not minimizing, I guess, their hardship, but we do need to think a bit more creatively about it, as opposed to just throwing funding at it. So I'm glad there's less government funding going into it, because our communities have always had the solutions. Communities will always have solutions, and they will always find ways to support one another. So the less the state is involved, the better. But as Sue said, it's better that charities and churches and the community takes charge of this, as opposed to the state, because the state really doesn't care, let's be honest.
Elliot, you're from South Auckland. You would see the need. I mean, food banks are meeting a need, aren't they?
Yeah, this was a topic that I was a little bit uncomfortable about, because I actually fully agree with everyone who's spoken so far, that Dave, in my opinion, Dave got very aligned politically, and he got very aligned with Te Pāti Māori as well as the Labour Party, very strongly aligned in there. And so some of the discussions did end up getting that state funding, which I think it doesn't work. There's a sense of socialism elements going on there. It just doesn't work, because it wasn't just a food bank that he was operating. He also had that gym element, and he also had this thing called the supermarket, which was this strange socialist supermarket where you go in and you basically just pluck things off. And so there are much more complicating factors with why he feels like he has to get rid of it. That money that he gets, the 175 over 2 years, may not seem like a lot, but I've seen churches and other charities and marae do absolutely wonderful things, and their places turn into cornucopias of food for that. So I want to be very careful, but I don't think. I think that his one is more of a political. He's run out of state money, and that's what we would have always expected. In terms of food banks themselves, of course, they're not the bullet. Of course, they're not, and I don't think they should be getting state funding, because it does allow. And Sue was saying this as well, that it allows people to engage in goodness and altruistic patterns. And while we don't have much good data here in the US, it's a very well researched topic that it does, and it's the charities who really help, and it's the Christian charities at the core leading the way for those charitable givings. So that's what we should be doing, not having the state attempt their socialistic policies.
Okay, and finally, Peter, do food banks have a place?
Yes, they do, but I was staggered in the video that you had of Dave Natale's operation to see rice and mince being spooned out into plastic containers. some of the other panelists have spoken already about the need to teach budgeting. I reckon the thing we've really got to teach is cooking. I remember being on a panel once with Christine Rankin, who said you can give some families all the most wonderful fresh produce in the world, some nice steak, some nice mince, some carrots, some nice broccoli or whatever. They wouldn't have a clue what to do with them. So this is a basic skill which has just disappeared from so many of our families. And I wonder why. Maybe around certain parts of the country, there are just too many fast food convenience outlets, so people don't need to go cooking, learn to cook anymore. But, you know, if people did know how to prepare their own food and know how to budget for a weekly supermarket shop, I think you would find a lot of the issues around food banks and people needing charity food that disappear pretty quickly, because after all, it's food which is not prepared, not cooked, which is a lot better value for money than already cooked food.
Yep. Okay, a lot of feedback on this one. Rosie says, instead of funding the America's Cup team, how about putting that money into food banks like David's? Liani says the cost of living is going up every day. The need is going to increase. Actually, I saw that Stats NZ came out with the data. The food prices have risen 1% in the last 12 months, believe it or not. That's
and fruit and veggies are down 8%, I think, Bob.
Yeah. Justine says, teach people to cook with basic ingredients. Many don't know how to make food with a few basics. Liao says, what is happening is that services like Work and Income are referring people to the food banks without funding giving to them. Oh, that's interesting. So in other words, they're saying go to the food bank, but no support. Communities need to start their own community gardens and food rescues. Liz says priorities are different. Expectations have changed. Previous generations were okay with secondhand or doing without. We expect to have it all in now without waiting. Yvonne says maybe if, no, actually, I couldn't quite understand this one. Peter says schools need to teach economics, money management and life skills in the curriculum. Well, that's after personal pronouns, Peter. We've got to get through the important stuff first. Nancy Margaret says, agree with Mel. We have turned people into thinking they are entitled to a handout. A hand up is different, should be a safety net only. And Veritatis says, Christians Against Poverty, CAP, are transforming lives through their budgeting, training and support. Yes, they are. Controversial issue, team, Treaties Principle Bill. Now, there's been a couple of polls come out, and I know this is an interesting one for you, Elliot. Now, firstly, so this is back in 2000, this is last year, 60% support for the bill, and it was 4-1 support of National supporters and 6-1% of Labor supporters. This is from The Facts, which is a very good website. Go and check it out. Now, they did a poll this time, so 12 months later. So remember, 60%, 4-1, 6-1. It's down to 46%, so we're looking on the left-hand side. So the support has dropped. But look at National. It's still reasonably strong, but look at Labor. Labor's support for the bill since they became, this is Labor's voters, since they became opposition has suddenly plummeted. So it's kind of like when they were in government, they thought it was a great idea. Now that they're in opposition, it's not such a great idea. There is still very strong support from National and ACT and New Zealand First. But interestingly, National and New Zealand First don't want it to go past first reading, despite the fact that most of their voters are in majority support. So, yeah, some interesting data there. So there has been a drop in support. Elliot, what do you think's happening here?
I think the ones on the left wing are that's very obvious. Basically, they're told what to think, and so they have to think what they're told. So that one, and I do mean that. I laugh about it, but I do mean it. They're told what to think, so they have to do that. In terms of National, yeah, they are very strong. The organisation that I represent has been getting a great deal of support, and we have a great deal of support within the National Party. We know that very well. In fact, even though it says 60%, I'd even argue it could even be more. It'd be interesting to see an internal polling of their own party, actually, one for one. But yeah, it's an excellent, the treaty principle itself, wonderful, good to see it coming out there. Not perfect. We do have some issues in terms of some of the hidden minds that they've got in there. But at the moment, much better than what we had previously.
Okay, Peter, do you think the support is dropping, or it's just that people are thinking it through and we look forward to the discussion?
Well, apart from that debate last Tuesday night between David Seymour and Helmut Modlik,
which was very good.
It was very good. I enjoyed it. I thought Seymour absolutely showed his class in that. But there's just been no wide-ranging discussion in the community about it. And as a consequence, I think there's been so much media pushback against the bill that it doesn't surprise me that support has dropped from 60% down to 46%. But remember, in that number, that graph you showed us, 29% are undecided. So there's still plenty of room for it to be over the 50% mark. But here's something I just wanted to bring up. I wrote a Substack today about the Solicitor General's prosecution guidelines. And this is why we need a discussion on the Treaty Principles Bill. This is what Una Jagos, the Solicitor General, says. It is well documented that the criminal justice system delivers disproportionately adverse results for Māori who are overrepresented as both defendants and victims. The guidelines ask prosecutors to think carefully about particular decisions where a person, either the defendant or the victim, is Māori or a member of any other group that is disproportionately impacted by the criminal justice system. Being Māori could correlate with deprivation or trauma that may be relevant to a specific decision, although that does not mean that that decision must be made in a particular way. The guidelines refer to Māori specifically because they are tangata whenua to whom the Crown has obligations under the Treaty of Waitangi, Te Tiriti o Waitangi. This reflects the Crown's duties under the treaty, or Te Tiriti. So that is the Solicitor General, the highest ranking legal officer at the Crown Law Office. She seems to be just cocking a snook and giving the middle finger to government policy. And frankly, that is why we have to have a 6-month select committee process for David Seymour's Treaty Principles Bill. And if we can have that, and if it can be fairly reported, which I know might be a wee bit much to ask in this day and age of the New Zealand media, if submissions to that select committee can be fairly reported, I think you'll find that 46% number grow pretty quickly.
Well, Peter, there's actually progress here that the Solicitor General is even acknowledging victims and is acknowledging that actually Māori are disproportionately represented in victim stats as well, which is part of the reason why people want the justice system beefed up. So
yes, true, but
there is a positive out of that.
Well, there is that positive, yes, but remember that David Seymour's third principle is that all New Zealanders have the same rights and duties. The same, S-A-M-E, the same rights. So I don't know what could be clearer than that. And here's the Solicitor General saying, no, there's one group of New Zealanders who have different rights, and I just think that's unconscionable.
Okay, Alla, you think this is an important discussion for us to have?
I'm probably in the undecided camp.
I'll show you where you are. You're just in that, what is it, 29% undecided.
Well, I haven't really been following it because I'm just appalled at some of the other legislation that the public isn't paying attention to. For example, the potential expansion of the euthanasia bill. I'm saddened that isn't getting as much traction as this bill, not minimising the importance of it. But I think my sort of head and heart are with the other bills that are kind of alarming and my line of work, I guess. So, but I'm in the undecided camp. I haven't really been across the bill, but I enjoy the discussions both online and even in some of the media, not all media outlets, but it's nice to have this discussion as a country. So I guess it's about time.
Yeah, I agree with you, Peter. I thought that debate with David Seymour and Helmut, whatever his name was, that was on a site that that was on a site that I don't normally watch. But it was a very well-balanced debate. We got to hear both sides and, there was no dramatic breakdown in social cohesion because of it. In fact, I learned a lot. Mel, what do you think?
think the numbers are dropping, especially on the left, because of emotional woman.
Gee, I'm just going to duck.
Potentially could be that. Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of toing and froing. It is a good discussion. As for the justice system, yeah, that's really interesting. It is in the youth courts. It is one of the most racist systems I have ever seen. It's absolutely shocking. It totally, with Māoris, it takes into account their upbringing, what they've been through. There's so much more than it would a young person of any other race. For older people, they can choose in Northland to go to the Māori courts, and again they attempt to do a wraparound program and stuff. But it's racist.
Okay, I was just trying to look up the data, but I don't think it was included on there. I was going to go to the Facts NZ website actually, and just have a look at the gender breakdown. I might have a look. Sue, what do you think?
So you have the 60%, and an idea was touted in the election campaign and part of the coalition. So we had an idea, and the bill is still yet to take shape. That firm, take of where it's going to go to is still to take shape. But in the meantime, I think the waters have been muddied, and you've got a whole lot of messaging come out. So I blame that. It's the fault of the messengers, I would suggest. And you have a movement of the messaging is entrenching that Marxist CRT ideology, underpinning to mobilise that movement. And so that's where all the discussion is in the media. So yeah, I think that we do need more of those debates. The irony it wasn't on a mainstream TV platform, but we can have these sensible conversations. We are adults, and we are at a point in our nation where these things need to be discussed sensibly, and we can do it. But I think it gets muddied saying what it is and what it will be and what it will look like. And that movement behind it is that Marxist CRT, and that's just entrenching and angering people. And I don't think they really know what they're marching for or what they're waving their flags for.
Okay, Elliot, I'll come to you in a sec. Just looking at the gender breakdown. So this is on the facts.nz. Males are basically 50% in support, 24% against, and 26% undecided. So 50% in support. Mel, you're right. Females are only 42% in support and 26% against. So there's that emotion coming through. Speaking of emotional people, Elliot?
So I just want to say that I watched a 2-hour panel discussion with some of the activists, some of the separatist activists, that was done a few days ago. And in that, they were very openly and very clearly seeking to redefine. This is their goal. The goal is to redefine Articles 1 and 3. That's what they want to. That's what they want to redefine. This is a direct assault, as an admitted direct assault on the very democracy, the idea of equality. They do want he pua. They want segregated government systems, and they do want that segregated power. That's why this discussion is so vital, because it also brings up where the different actors are placed and what they really want for this nation. So it is. It's really important.
Okay, look, we're just about out of time. It is our 60th episode, so we thought we'd do something quirky at the end of this. And look, what is the song you would like to listen to while you're dying? UK hospice charity Marie Curie polled relatives who have lost loved ones to create a playlist. 84% of respondents said that music helped their relatives relax during their last moments, and 61% said playing certain songs helped lessen anxiety and distress. The top 10 songs that people listen to before we find out what the panelists' ones are. Number 10 was These Are the Days of Our Lives by Queen. Number 9 was Hey Jude by the Beatles. 8 was Beautiful by Christina Aguilera. That's what my family will sing to me. 7 was What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong. Number 6 was Angels by Robbie Williams. Number 5 was this one, Girls just want to have fun. I mean, who has that singing to them at the end of their life? Okay, that's just kind of weird. This one was number 4, which I think is a lovely one. Judy Garland, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. For the hedonist, there's this one, Simply the Best. Yeah. We won't sing that one to ourselves, will we? We're simply the best. This is probably more of an appropriate one. This was number 2. Oh, that's quite nice to hear. But the number 1 song, as someone is facing the end of their life, is this song. Oh yeah, Did It My Way. Okay, so Did It My Way. That may not be your choice. So just to finish with, let's quickly go around the panel and just check what your song is. And I am starting with Elliot, seeing you're our special guest tonight. What's your song you'd like to hear in your dying stages?
That would be The Crossroads by Bone Thugs and Harmony.
This one. What's so special about this song?
It was at a time where some of my friends got killed in some gang warfare stuff, but it was an important part of my life.
Okay. Sue, what's your choice?
Well, I was choosing from the list. What a wonderful world.
Yeah, okay. I just thought you can't really play this at your funerals, Sue, because, I mean, he's smiling so much.
You just got to have a happy funeral. I've been through
Does he
this
always
recently
sing with a
with my
smile like
mother.
that?
She marched out to wish me luck as you waved me goodbye. You know, she loved to laugh and she wanted us to laugh. No, have a joyful march out and we've lived a good life and we know where we're going.
Okay. Peter, what's your choice?
I think if somebody convinced me that I should undertake euthanasia, I think on my final deathbed, I'd like to change my mind. So Kendrick Lamar, who I see now charges $1 million for a show and he's not coming to New Zealand, don't do it. Don't do it.
I know. I asked my family if they knew this song and they sort of did, but they thought, Peter Williams likes this song. What's going on here? That's just kind of weird. Don't do it. I mean, the lyrics are pretty easy to learn.
He's not coming to Bay Dreams because he's charging $1 million. So
yeah, well, that's good. If that festival doesn't go ahead, there's less drugs and less conceptions. Right. Who was Mel? What's your choice?
Always Remember Us This Way by Lady Gaga. It's from.
Why is this one special to you? Is this you pretending to sing on your grand piano?
Yeah, no. Everyone knows I can't sing. Wouldn't even try. But it's from A Star Is Born movie. Yeah. And it was actually a really, really cool movie. And it talks about being totally and utterly in love, which I am with my darling. And it also addresses a lot of things that we've addressed in working with kids, you know, all sorts, suicide and drugs and all sorts.
Oh, there we go. Jim will give you a big hug when you get off this broadcast. I noticed that none of you have picked a church song, so it's going to have to be down to Allah. Allah, rescue me, please. What's your choice of song you'd like to hear in those final stages?
I've taken a song out of Psalm 18. This is the day that the Lord has made. Because it is a time to rejoice.
Who's the singer?
Fred Hammond, gospel singer.
Oh.
So it's going to be a party when I go.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Oh, yeah, very good. Okay, just finally, my choice, I took it out of biblical one as well. It talks about when you walk through the storm, you'll never walk alone. And it was recorded at Anfield. Walk on with hope in your heart. Here we are. Oh, look at that. Have you ever done that, Peter? Sat at Anfield and sang You'll Never Walk Alone?
No, I've been to Old Trafford though, Bob.
Who? Oh, is that where the cricket ground is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very good.
Okay,
Jerry and
that's
the
it.
Pacemakers did a much better version.
Yeah, well, they did actually, but I just thought I might have been in the crowd because we actually sang it at Anfield at the end of last year 3 times. It was lovely. Anyway, we are out of time. Thank you, panel. Did a great job, Mel, especially. Thank you for coming in at the last moment. Little Samuel there with Ala. Bedtime, Samuel. Woo! Okay, and thank you for watching. We will see you next Monday night at 8 o'clock. Don't forget Solid Ground with Simon O'Connor tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Same place, same bat channel. Have a great week.
Yeah.